Hello and welcome to the February 2020 Q&R with me, Brent Weeks. As usual, I'm going to take some questions to begin with that were put in last month or in previous months that we thought were particularly insightful or interesting, or gave me a chance to rag on Joe Abercrombie, the usual, and then we'll move on to. We will move on to your live questions, which I hope to see soon. Hold on, my assistant is bothering me. Sorry, there we go. Man, I really gotta figure out assistant discipline. Anybody have any thoughts? Anyway, I'm going to start with Tyrell Starnes. He says, "Hey Brent, I've recently had a humbling lesson on show don't tell. And I've got a feeling that this lesson has only begun. What are your thoughts on this frustratingly vague rule? That is, how do you gauge when you've got the right balance between the two, and how do you judge when to show or tell?" Okay, so all rules in writing have only one purpose. There is only one rule in writing, and that is that you keep readers turning pages. Every other sub rule that you've ever heard only functions insofar as, or only applies insofar as it upholds that first rule. You can do whatever you want if you can get away with it. Show don't tell is challenging because you can't show everything. There are things you want to skip. So I think the basic test comes down to relevancy. That is the importance of a particular detail to a character or to the story. If I'm constantly telling you that my character Joe is funny, but he never cracks a joke, or he cracks jokes but they're not funny, then you haven't established that Joe is actually funny. You're just telling me that. And frequently writers who are not very funny will do this, and it's infuriating, and everybody notices it. So if Joe, on the other hand, speaks 7 languages, but in this book he only ever needs 2, then mentioning that he speaks the others in passing is just fine. It just establishes this guy is a polyglot or a linguist or what have you. If a woman has 7 jobs, but the point of your story is only that she's very busy, she's very important, and she's exhausted all the time, you don't need to show her doing every single one of her jobs. But when you do show her, you need to show her that she's busy with one of them, or she's thinking about them, or she's exhausted. And then you just show what she's doing for the plot, what's relevant for the plot. Incidentally, these kind of things are a nice place where you can sneak in foreshadowing. It looks to the reader like you're just mentioning a bunch of things in passing, and then you're going on to what's really important. And then when they come back to it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that dog! That was there all along. He told me, that this character." Like to juggle knives, and I didn't think that was important until chapter 30. Okay. So beyond that, it's a relevancy test. You want to bring in things also. You want to bring them in close to the time when they're relevant, or bring them in passing early, and don't go on and on about every single character trait early on, because readers will just get bored. So you want to, again, keep readers turning the pages, bring things up in a way that seems organic, and that then can still surprise readers. Okay, Logan Anderson asks, "I'm getting ready to try to publish my first book. Any advice for a newbie?" If you're easily frightened, go ahead and just mute this next short period of time, because I'm going to try to scare you, I guess. Imagine you're 40 years old. Somebody picks up that first book you ever wrote. Are they then, after they finish that book, well, first, are they going to finish that book? Are they then, after they finish that book, ever going to read anything else that you wrote? If so, if they are going to read everything you've ever written, you've got a career. If that first book is good enough to launch a career, if that book is so great that you're never going to be embarrassed by it, then you can make it. If there are always going to be things in your books that you're like, man, I could do that so much better. Or after 20 years of writing, you go, that part's a little cringy. I hope there are those things in your work, because if there's not, you're not getting better, and that's that's terrible. So there will be things you get better, but you want that first book to be absolutely great, so that readers are like, man, not all the things in this book work for me, but I want to see what happens next. I want to see what this person can do. I remember listening to an author, I think the guy's name was Mike Moscow, before I was published, and he used this breakdown, which I don't know if it's technically true, but he threw it out there. He said that readers pick up books three ways, and he said it was in thirds. He said one third hears a recommendation from somebody. Somebody hands them the book and says, "You've got to read this," and 1/3 of readers pick up a book because they know the guy. They go, "Oh, Stephen King. I know Stephen King is going to give me something good," and so they read that. And then the third, the last third, he claimed, was readers pick up the book and they thumb through it a little bit. They read a small sample, or they download it to their Kindle and they read that little sample there. And as a new writer, you only have that sample. 2/3 of the ways people pick up books, you don't have. They are not available to you. Your book's new, nobody's read it. It just comes out. It's one of hundreds of books that's come to the bookstore. The bookstore people haven't read it. It's just there. Hopefully it has good cover art. So you need to polish the first paragraph, the first page, the first chapter, way more than Stephen King does. And you'll find that the best people don't get lazy. They don't take it for granted that you're going to read every little bit that they've written. It's consistently great, just in case you pick up book 30 of theirs first, and they still want you to then go on and read everything they've written. So make sure that you pass that test yourself. Like, this is not just a good book. This isn't like, well, this is better than 50% of the books that are out there on the shelves. Like, you want it to be better than 99% of the books out there on the shelves, or at least 95. So make it great. And that's depressing enough. And that was 3 minutes of depression. So we'll there you go. Just skip that section if you are easily cowed. Okay. Michael Spafford, this is one of the last ones I've got written down from before. He says, I've recently started Joe Abercrombie books. Why is there a rivalry between you two? Also, will you regrow your mighty wizard beard? So you've recently started Joe Abercrombie books. Well, number one, stop that. Number two, I assume you guys really actually want to peek behind the curtain. And since you're watching me, and I'm not sure why, but since you are watching me, I'm gonna give you that little peek behind the curtain. I like having Joe as sort of my online nemesis because I can roast him, and he'll just roast me right back, and there's no hard feelings. Joe is kind of he's well situated to be a nemesis for me. Because we both started. He started maybe a couple years earlier in the industry than I did. We're both successful, but not redonkulously successful. So he sells more books in England. I sell more books in the U.S. We can get mad at each other because he got this ridiculously good deal in territory X and I didn't, or what have you. But the main thing is that I can serve something up. I can serve up a little insult and put some heat on it, right? I can hit the tennis ball at Joe's face and know that he's gonna probably have a good chance after 8 hours of looking at it to send it back. That said, there's an art to getting the proper amount of heat on a roast. Like you do this carefully, and you do this with people which can get kind of awkward with readers, because readers think they know you, and they do know you, but you don't know them. So like, I'll be roasting Joe, and then somebody else will jump in and roast Joe. It's like, Joe doesn't know you. And like maybe you know both Joe and me because you've read both of our books. But when sometimes it just doesn't come across quite right. So like there's things I wouldn't tease Joe about for real, because it's like, okay, that's just hurtful. But when I tease, I teased him the other day because he had a book coming out. I sort of go, oh, hey, it's so short. It's like a 200,000 word book, which is still 600 pages. That gives him an opportunity to roast me back, right? That's fine. But really what I'm doing there is I'm drawing attention to the fact that Joe has a new book out. So it's sort of a win-win. It's like, we do it, it's fun. Sometimes it stings a little bit, but that's all in the game. Okay. The wizard beard. So it turns out I've got the redhead genes. Turns out that redheads tend to go gray faster than most people. So when I grow the beard out, it's really gray, and I look like an old fantasy writer. And man, what could be worse? So I'm not quite ready for that, or my wife and kids aren't ready for me to do that yet. So someday the old guy wizard beard will come out, and I will embrace the fantasy writer stereotype. Just not ready for that yet. A last couple of super quick ones, just to get them off the docket. Allison Ryan asks, have you always planned for Tisis to have such a major role? No. That's something that I learned from. I didn't mute my TV. How unprofessional could I get? Or my monitor. Using minor characters to across plot lines, especially when you have such a large cast, is you want to reuse the characters, have them fill multiple roles, and certain things weren't working out well with the character of Liviana. I think I've talked about that before. I sort of introduced her in a way that readers responded more negatively than I had assumed they would. I thought they would have a little more grace for Liviana. And I realized, oh, you know what? I screwed this up. First impressions are super important in fiction, just like they are in real life. So if you go, this person is a terrible human being, and that's your first impression, you're going to hold on to that for a long time, versus you have a good first impression of somebody, and later on they do something terrible. You go, well, gee, that's not like Jim. I mean, he's never done this kind of thing before. What was going on for him there? So I screwed that up with Liviana, and so I ended up diminishing her role from what I had initially planned, 10 years ago. And then as I went along, Tisis, she grew on me, and thus she grew in the books as well. And then Jordan Jones from YouTube had a question, but the answer is a spoiler. So Jordan, if you're watching, I will tell you, yes, he always was. He was just playing the long con. So if you reread, I think you'll see some hints of that thing throughout. All right, and now I'm going to try to jump in and do this live thing, and to just to hit a couple things that I get asked every time. So some of you have heard this. I'll try to be quick. I'm currently writing a book set in Mikiru. I'm not. You will see some crossover characters. You will see some characters that you've seen before. Not telling you at what point in their lives, but that's happening. It's going well. Number two, no movies or TV shows in the works. Also, no video games in the works. Although, if I had one of those in the works, I wouldn't be able to tell you because I have NDAs. So, since I just told you, you know I'm telling you the truth. Well, that's not necessarily true. You get me. Also, currently no Nine Kings games in the works. It's really hard to juggle all these things at the same time. Sorry. And my assistant very politely points out, Krista Evans asked me her question, but she'd been waiting months to ask me. Where is it, Krista? Okay. I'm trying. Oh, there it is. Okay. Krista Evans says, how do you get past that point when you feel stuck on a certain scene that you want to work, but it just isn't? I'm at work right now, so I probably won't have time to hear an answer. Oh, you're just going to ask me and then leave? Oh, man, I feel terrible about this. If your intuition, so there are people who come at writing a lot of different ways. If you're an intuitive person generally, or you lean a little more on the intuitive, and you're stuck on a scene, trust yourself. Something went wrong somewhere. So back it up and start asking yourself questions. Start writing down the answers to the questions. Is this who this person is? Is this what they would do in this situation? Why isn't this fun for me? What is fun for me? What are the major problems that this character has to deal with? How can I use this scene to make that main problem worse for them? Or is this scene just an interesting distraction, but I kind of have that sense underneath that this scene is great, and I've done this. I do this now. I'll write a scene. It's a great scene. The scene works really well. The characters are doing really wonderful things, and I get stalled out because I sort of suddenly realize something's wrong with it, and later on I realize that's a great scene. It doesn't help the book. Like, you could cut 3/4 or half of this scene and the book would be fine. Like, the book would make the point that the book is still trying to make. So you realize you're writing fluff, and then you'll lose all confidence. So those are a few of the things that I would try. Focusing on what the main things are, what the main problems your characters are doing, and making them worse, and seeing how does this scene do that. Sometimes it's helpful to talk out loud to somebody, or to talk out loud to yourself if that works better. If you don't have a person around who's a good listener, usually you don't need them to say much. You just need to say all the words out loud. So try some of those things, and I hope that's helpful. Sophia Dana Eccleston says, how many words do you generally have in a chapter on average? I think in my Night Angel books, I think I averaged probably 1,500 words. I would go with really, really short chapters sometimes. I mean, 500 words, and then I would have up to 4,000 or 5,000 word chapters every once in a while. But lots and lots, as that series went along, lots of 2,000 word chapters. Longer chapters were 3,000 words, but I had lots of 1,000 word chapters. Those books were pretty rapid fire. I definitely got more wordy, or as I went along in Lightbringer, chapters were longer. I don't know if this is just because I got more boring as I got older, or if it's because I understood a little more about setting up the scene, making sure that we didn't have just floating heads talking in the fog. I think Stephen King talks about that in his book on writing, where you pare back the scene too much, and now you've just got voices talking to each other. You have no idea where they are. There's heads in the fog. But there's not a rule. Some people say, there's a rule. There's no rules. Make it as long as, or as short as you want it to be. If you have a lot of really rapid fire scenes, some readers are going to be turned off by that, but you have to do what you think works for you. Let's see. I may have missed some. I look like the next Gandalf. Come on. Sean Price asks where I'm going to pick up with the Night Angel series, and I'm not telling you yet. Let's see. Some questions about pantsing versus plotting. I think I've talked about that some, and I'm somewhere in between. Lindsay, are you going to write one of your favorite fans into your books? No, I'm not. I don't have favorites. That's not because you're all my favorite. It's because none of you are my favorite fan. I'm sorry, none. Let's see. Actually, I think somebody can correct me. I think it's called a Bowdlerization when you put a character, a real person, into your book. Is that right? And I've only done that once. I did that once for a charity thing, and I was able to do that in the last Lightbringer book, actually. So in general, man, it's a whole other level of kind of like, it's a pain to work things in while I'm doing all the editing and trying to make sure like the name fits into the real world, into the world, or like I check it and see if the person's happy with it, and this and that. And I don't do it a lot. I know Brandon Sanderson does it a lot, but Brandon's got a whole team, and also writes incredibly fast. But he's got a whole team to make sure, you know, some of that more administrative stuff is handled. So I don't generally put anybody from the real world in my books. Yes, okay. Night Angel, yes. Who would win a fantasy battle? Brent Weeks or Joe Abercrombie? I mean, come on, you're in the wrong place to ask that. Yeah, you know the answer. Okay, Andrew Spry, who it has a little diamond next to his name, says he's a top fan, so definitely I need to answer this one. Okay, I'm actually trying to put my own Nine Kings game together on my own. It's a little tough considering my work schedule. Well, fair enough. Yeah, so there's stuff about fair use there. Like basically, you can do those things as long as you're not trying to make money on them, and like, but the creator, me, of the world stuff, like I can't play anything that you guys make up, because then if I do sell it to somebody else, and you know, Hasbro or whoever the heck, or Wizards of the Coast, and my game, or you know, Wizards of the Coast game and your game bear some you know, resemblance to each other, which of course they would, you could sue me. Like I would win that lawsuit, but I don't really want to give the lawyers all my money. So that's something that comes up every once in a while. Okay. I guess we're at 20 minutes, or we're way past 20 minutes, and they tell me 20 minutes is sort of a golden zone. So I'll look and see if there's one last one, and then we'll call it good for a month. Okay. Oh, Kelsey Store, say, do you find that because you've had these great characters, it makes you hesitant to start a new world? Not to say if you're a failure, just hard to eclipse your previous successes. There's always excitement and fear to starting every new project. And my thought is that if you aren't afraid, you're not growing. So if you're not afraid of the next project, it's not worth doing. So I try to welcome it. I say, you know what, I've got places to grow in my art, and I love that. And it's scary, and it slows me down, and it causes me to run into some dead ends because I try things that are harder, and then they turn out to be even much harder than I expected. But I think that's part of the adventure. I think that's part of the fun of being an artist, is wrestling with your art and feeling like you've learned something and that you're better today than you were yesterday. So I find that kind of exhilarating. But I also have, you know, sometimes you write and you make mistakes and you realize I have to throw out months of work, and that is terrible. But the highs are worth the lows. So I'm glad I'm still in the game. Glad I've entertained you guys thus far. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I'll see you next month. Take care. Bye.